G'day guys, so today we're going to be looking at part 3 of the LED conversion on the Gen 2 Pajero. So we're looking at the heater and air conditioning display today. We've previously done the Incline oil and volt meter cluster, and we've also done the dash instrument cluster here as well. Just on that one, I'll just briefly just some additional comments on this one. So when I did this one here, I actually replaced the larger bulbs, the T10s, with these ones here. As you'll note that they've got like I think 9 LEDs on these ones, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, if my maths correct. So these ones started flickering, and I replaced one twice, and it started flickering again. I figured it was something to do with it. Either, maybe these weren't lined up properly, these pieces of metal that connect to the socket, or something was going. Anyway, long story short is they kept flickering all the time. So I've taken them out, and I've now replaced them with these ones. So again, T10, but only 4 LEDs, and I'm not having the flickering issue with these ones. So it's worth noting that maybe those larger ones were drawing too much power, or that could be just a faulty batch. I don't know, but these ones I'm not having the same flickering issue. And they illuminate okay on, both the speedo and the displays, but in the middle there, so when the fuel and the temperature, it's a little bit on the dull side, but I don't mind. You can still see it quite well. So anyway, so that's just an update on what's happened there with that one. So I've had to replace those bigger bulbs with smaller amounts of LEDs and they've stopped flickering, and we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we'll get back to what we're doing here today. So yeah, so we're going to work on this particular area there. So with my stereo, I've got that surround around the stereo there. So depending on what sort of aftermarket stereo, if you do have one, or if you have the original stereo in there, I don't obviously have the original stereo, so I won't be able to offer up any video on how to take the surround off that, or what needs to be done to get, or even if the surround needs to come off, I don't even know. So, but in my case, I need to take this black surround off here. Okay, and then once I've done that, there's then up the top here, there's a screw up in here, and then there's a screw over here, and then basically that then just clips out. The whole surround needs to come out. Yeah, so basically I've taken that surround off now, so pretty easy job for me, and I've taken these 2 screws out. So this here basically just comes off like this. Now down the bottom down here is a couple of just steel clips, so you just need to put a bit of pressure on the bottom there and pop them out like that, and then that just comes straight out. Okay, so we'll place that over there. 3 screws up the top there, and then you've got these 5 along the base plate there. So we'll take those out. There's a couple of ways you can do this, guys. Like so, I've pulled a little black fascia off around here that just clips on. So look, you can take your radio out and get up underneath and remove the cables, or you can just pry it forward just enough, just so you can reach in and just remove that bulb from the top, and then you can actually get down in there to get that second bulb. I mean, you probably take this entirely out, and unclip all the cables and everything else. And there's another video on the internet that shows how to do that, but like that's a hard job. So, and I've replaced these before, and I've managed just to be able to do it without removing the cables. It's a bit fiddly. You're going to be careful you don't break anything, you don't force anything, but it can be done. So as I say, so I've basically, just down in the side here, and it's hard to show you, but down in the side here you've got, yeah, you really can't see in there, I'm sorry, but there's just a lever of sorts. You've just got to push across a little bit as you're pulling this out. I'm sure you'll see if you attempt to do it. So just enough to pull it out a bit without having to so you can just get in over the top here, like in there, without having to pull it entirely out. So that's how I replaced the LED and replaced the bulbs in them originally when they blew, and put LEDs in. So I'm just going to do it the same way again, and as I say, a lot more fiddly, and you know, but I did get it to work last time. But I mean, the proper way would be to actually pull the radio out and go up underneath and disconnect. There's two cables at the bottom, and then there's another cable at the top over the back there that you need to disconnect from the unit to be able to bring that ride out. And then if you are, you need to also just remove that knob off there as well. You know, but I'm going to give it a crack like this, you know, see if I can't just get the job done without. I've already pulled one bulb out, you can see there that I've got this, it's a T5, I've already pulled it out, the original bulb that was in there, so I'm going to put a blue one in, and then the other one's down in the bottom down there, which is a little bit harder to get at. But I'll persevere and see how I go, and I'll come back to you soon. Righto guys, so I've just chucked a bulb in there just to see how we go. The original bulbs that I took out of there, the LEDs that I originally replaced these with, I got the good Nava ones. There's obviously the Chinese brand, so a little bit more difficult to get in, but the end result is that we do get that, you know, that blue globe in, and we do get it to work. So now just to try and replace the other one. And so I did end up taking the radio out, guys. I think I was dreaming if I thought that I couldn't get up underneath there. You know, so in there to get that other bulb without taking the radio out. So just to make it easier, I've just unscrewed you know, the radio, and disconnected the wires, and just dropped it down on the floor down there while I get up underneath it, the other bulb. So because it's up underneath there, you can't pull it through. Right, as you can see, I've got the bulb from up inside there, which is down underneath the actual control itself. I've got it coming out, sitting out there now. I'll just replace the bulb in that one as well. Righto guys, so I've got the two bulbs in, and they're a little bit hard to get in with these Chinese bulbs, these LEDs. They're a little bit wider than they probably could, so you know, just maybe with a little knife you could just trim the edge a little bit to make them slide in a little bit easier, but don't go overboard. You don't want them you know, vibrating out at all. So now I'll put it all back together again, so and try and get these bulbs back in their sockets. Okay guys, so you can see that I've got the globes in now, so we've got the blue bulbs in. Look, I'm not going to lie to you, that's not the easiest way to do it. Oh, there's no real easy way to do it. The way I did it's just as hard as trying to lever those cables off from underneath and the one on top. I just can't reiterate enough though not to wrench on all of this stuff too much. It's only plastic in behind there, and you've got these little cogs and levers, and don't kink the cables or anything like that. You'll end up with more trouble than it's actually worth just to put bulbs in. So take your time, be patient. You can get it done, and you can get them back in. As I said, I did take the radio out. In the end, it was a little bit easier rather than going in over the top, because if I went in over the top, I would have pulled on it too hard and risked breaking something. And you break something inside there, and you're replacing the whole unit, buying a second-hand one and replacing it. As I said earlier, there is another video on YouTube. It's an Italian guy, I think he's Italian or Spanish. Just search Gen 2 Mitsubishi dash cluster or something like that, or bulb LED, something like that, and you'll come up with it. And he does go through how to get it actually all the way out, and you'll see what I mean by how difficult the cables are to release from the unit. So that's why I chose to just go in and do it like this. It works just as well. I did it this way once before, I never had any issues. So yeah, so just again, be careful when you do it, because it's only plastic, so don't go breaking it. But anyway, putting it back together is just the reverse of pulling it apart. So I'll start by putting the radio back in, and then and the rest will follow. So, and I'll check in back in with you then. Right guys, so halfway back in, so You know, before I always totally, you know, get this back together, I always like to try a few different things. So, you know, I've checked the radio already, obviously, but I'm just making sure that it powers up, and also the same as, you know, all the globes are still working, everything. I haven't done anything and everything's still fine. So just periodically just check, make sure you haven't bumped anything, or you know what I mean. So last thing you want to do is get it all back together and find that you know, it's something's come away or come loose. Just one other tip is when you're doing up all of this, just don't just do them up so they're just finger tight, all of these screws, until you get them all in, like the whole 3 and 5 down the bottom there. Then once you get it all nice and you can line it up and get it then all nice and tightened up after you've buttoned up after you did that. Okay, so that's everything back together now. So I've got all that buttoned up nicely, and as we can see, the lights are still working there. The radio is still happening. Yep. I'll just turn that radio off. I don't want to get done for copyright. So yeah, so we've got everything happening there. So all good. So hopefully nothing shakes loose. One other tip that I've probably got, if you're doing something for the first time and you're not entirely sure what you're doing, which is pretty much every time I do it, I'll grab my phone out, and before I dismantle anything, I'll take photos. Okay, so then I've got some reference when I'm putting it back together, you know, because you can't always rely on Google and the internet and manuals. They're not very descriptive sometimes, a bit vague. But if you've got a photo showing exactly what you're pulling apart and what it was like before you did it, as I said, you've got some reference when it's going back together. So take photos, guys, and you know, it's saved me heaps of times. You know, I've dismantled the top end of an LS motor. Never done it before. Just took heaps and heaps of photos, and I referenced those photos plenty of times in order to get it all back together again. You know, so yeah, so that's a good tip as well. So look, that's that done. That's a wrap. That's that was part 3 of the LED conversion. Hopefully, as I say, it all stays together. But as with any modification, you know, normally it's a bit of suck it and see. But anyway, like and subscribe. Plenty of more stuff coming up soon. Got a trip up to Dodgy coming up soon, into the high country in the Pajero, so look out for that one. Hopefully I'll make it there. I tried this time last year and didn't make it because of COVID, so we'll see how we go. But anyway, enough rattling on, and I'll see you in the next vid.